So,
13 minutes past 1, yeah.
13 minutes past 1. This is Saturday, the 5th of December 2009, and we're here with Alan Farrant of Valley Cottage in Fordham.
In Fordham, in Chapel Road.
Fordham, Essex. And we're going to talk to Alan about his life story, really. So, Alan, could we start then with your full name? How were you named as a child?
Alan Richard Farrant.
And when were you born?
You caught me. Is this?
Yes.
It's on.
Yeah, you're live now.
You caught me for the moment. When was I born? I've forgotten.
What year?
18th of September 1924.
Oh, okay.
It takes a time to get in, you see.
Yes, to get the dates, yes. We're going to talk about family. So could we perhaps start with names of brothers and sisters?
Yep. Names of the brothers and sisters is there's one sister, Irene, and three brothers, 4 boys.
And when were they born? What order? Who's the oldest?
The oldest one is John, and unfortunately he died 6 months ago. And then the girl comes in, and after that there's Leonard, who is living at the moment over in Upper Walthamstow. Oh dear, yes. It's still in Walthamstow, but in the just on the outskirts.
So there's 4 of you.
And my other brother moved out to Cheshire in Hertfordshire.
So that's 5.
No, it's
5.
5. No, 5 altogether. Yes,
5 children.
That's right.
So, what was your father's name?
Father was John again, and he was called Jack because he'd been in the Navy.
And do you know where he was born and when he was born?
Goodness me, it would be London.
Born in
London
London.
area. But,
any idea of his age?
the dates? Well, I can only assume that it was around about the early 1900s, because he was in the Navy in the First World War, so he must have been of a certain age to get in there. So
when did he die? Do you know how old he was when he died? And when he died?
It must have been in the 30s. Yes, in the 30s, and he had cancer.
And how old was he?
He must have been round about 52 or something like that. Quite young.
So how old were you when he died?
I was about 11 or 12.
So that places it quite well then, yes. So what did he do? Where did he work?
He had his own little business. He was a cabinet maker, and I'm afraid the depression that was around at the time, terrible depression, he lost his business for that, and he had to get other work. And from being a craftsman woodworker, he had to get jobs on the building sites, which didn't please him very much, particularly when the foreman used to come round and say, hurry up, you know. And he was still trying to do the joints that had to be made for windows and that sort of thing. I mean, there were no preset windows then. You couldn't buy them off the rack. You had to make them on the spot, and they had to be made in a hurry. Rubbish.
So these were for the houses,
the houses that were going up at the time.
So where did you live? What was the address? Where you were born?
Well, he was in Walthamstow. That was the family house, and
what was the address? What was the road?
The address was Elphinstone Road, and wish I had a stop button on this so that I could think a bit.
It doesn't matter. We can come back to it.
No.
So
how important is that?
No, just general,
Yes,
general
right,
interest.
yes.
So that he started off as a carpenter, but went to work for builders, doing whatever.
Yes, but he was a cabinet maker. He trained as a cabinet. He had some marvellous tools, you know, beautiful things. And
so he was out of work then. During the Depression.
He was out of work for periods, but he used to. I got a memory of watching him coming down the road with his bag on his shoulder, and she said, "Oh dear, he's blown his top again," because he would. He had these foremen who didn't know, without being rude, from one end of a joint to another, and he would tell them what he thought of them, get his cards.
So the First World War, then he signed up, or was called up.
Called up.
And what did he do?
He was in the Navy, and he spent about 4 or 5 years, I think. And part of that time he was out in India on the fleet when they were out there. And the thing I can remember about this, he was chasing the German battleship Wolf. Now, I've never heard of that except from him, and I don't know whether you have or no, but it was wrecking our merchant fleet all that way, and they finally got them. But,
what was his rank? What was his duty on?
I think he's probably leading seaman or something like that. And I don't know an awful lot about him. He had various ships under him. One of them was a big battleship at one time, and that's about it. I can tell you. I've very few memories of him in the Navy.
I should think so.
I wasn't around, you see.
That's right. You were a youngster. So, okay, let's talk about Mother. What's Mother's name, and what was her maiden name?
Brown. Not the Gordon Brown you're talking today, but her name was Brown, and she lived in Hackney.
What was her first name?
Maud Rebecca.
Maud Rebecca Brown.
Maud Rebecca Brown. And she was a seamstress, I suppose you can say. Yeah.
Do you know where they met?
Very difficult.
I'm
sorry.
No, I wouldn't know.
I possibly they were living at one time in the same road or something like that.
Did they marry after the war?
No, she was married during the war. And I don't know. Another blank. I wish I'd researched this.
So can you put an age to her when she was born, or how old were you when she died, and how old was she?
Well, Mum must have died after this Second World War, when that was over, and because she was at home through that, and Dad died probably something like 36,
and Mum not so long after the Second World War.
Something like
So how old was she when she died?
How old was
your mother?
Mother? She must have been in 50s, perhaps 60.
So she was a seamstress, and bring out. So your parents brought up the children in Walthamstow. So what do you remember of grandparents, if at all? Anything? Do you know names? And
They lived. No, I don't. They were Browns. They lived a little way from us, walking distance. And oh dear.
Okay, grab a strepsil. Let's switch
Have a
off.
strepsil.
Switch off.
This is the commercial break. Have you, do you know what this is? Is it on now?
Yeah, it is. Right, we're okay now. The throat is soothed. So we were just talking about grandparents.
Yeah.
You only remember the Browns, not your father's side.
No. No.
And they again were somewhere in the Walthamstow area.
Not necessarily, but if you like to say Greater London, yes. Yes, that would be a better thing to say. I can't remember too much about them. Granny Brown, we used to call her. She was, yeah. And I used to remember her coming down to an aunt's place, and she was wearing this, I don't know what the material was, but she used to rustle as she walked. Swish, swish.
Yes. Very Victorian by the sound of it.
Is that taffeta?
Yes, probably. Yes. Okay, so what about earliest memories? Where were you born for a start? Was it in the house or in a hospital?
I was born in a hospital. I think it's Thorpe Combe in Walthamstow. And
so what are your earliest memories?
You just got me there.
Was it school or getting chased down the road?
No, I think it was playing at the bottom of the garden. There was a farmer's field, and we used to play out there. It was a smallish garden, so my father put a gate in so that we could get in and out into the field. The neighbours, the husbands there, got together and they all mowed a piece there. They didn't ask permission, they just mowed it, and we had a football pitch and cricket. And that was to keep us off the streets. That's what we had. And
the landowner didn't mind.
Lovely situation, yes. It's interesting.
What was the house like? Is it still there, or is it an old?
It's still there, and I went back to it about a couple of years ago, and unfortunately the people were all out of work, which is a pity, but it hasn't changed hardly at all. In fact, our initials that we carved, we had an archway in the front as you went into the house, red brick, and we carved our initials in there, and they're still there.
Really? Was that a job well done, the carving?
It was done with a penknife or something, so you'd have to take the brick out to get rid of it.
But the area's changed quite a bit.
Quite a bit, yes. But,
so how many rooms, how many bedrooms, for instance?
There'd be 3 bedrooms, and there's a question in one. There were 2 beds, a big one and a small one, so there'd be 3 people in that bed. 3 children.
Yeah.
Mum and Dad had got their own bigger room, and another small room, which was called the box room, but it still housed one other person. So there were 7 people in the house altogether.
And what about facilities, electric, water and...
I can remember when we only had gas. Horrible stuff for lighting. And I don't know if you know that these gas have mantles on them that glow. Do you remember this?
Yes.
And we had to sort of be very careful and not touch it. And if we did,
it would just collapse.
Messing about, the whole thing collapsed.
You
got a box around the ears for that.
So what about water? How was that heated?
Water heating, I think that was heated by...
And washing, for that matter.
No, the washing is interesting. We had a boiler, huge tub of a thing that was a coal boiler. Underneath you put the coal in, or wood if you got it. And that used to be done for the weekly wash. And I think before the wash came in, we used to get a bath in it. Not when it was boiling. But we had no bathroom.
No. What about the toilet? Was that
Well, it was
bottom of the garden?
proper toilet.
Oh, in the house?
No, not down the garden. No, we weren't that what shall I say, out in the country. But,
So it's a fairly modern house, really.
it was, because as I say, it was pretty well new when we moved into it. And the whole street, unfortunately, was the same. The one advantage, I don't know whether you were coming up to ask about schooling, but the school we went to was directly opposite the house. We used to lie in bed until we could hear the bell ringing over
Last
there.
minute and then off. What was the school called?
What was the
name of the school?
school? Was goodness me. It was the school that covered all the years, the primary, the secondary, and the other course. So it was a block of schools, and they were probably called. It didn't have a name, as in.
So it's Walthamstow. Walthamstow
I
School.
think it's just Walthamstow School Board. That was about it. I think.
Was there a uniform?
I'm sure it was no uniform. Oh yes, you could. We couldn't afford them. But
So
no, it was a very good school, you know, for what they did. And of course, as you got to the end of the junior school, you had exams to sit. If you didn't pass the exams, you went up to the senior grade, which was complete for getting you ready for 4 years there, and then you left there to go to work. But I went up to, I passed my exam and went to the central school, they used to call it. And that was, you could take proper exams from there, and you know, it was quite good.
So life at home, Mum did all the work, did she, as usual? How was the food cooked? Did you have a cooker, a gas cooker presumably?
Gas. That's right. Was gas.
Mm.
Mum did all the work. There was no help for her at all. And she wasn't a well woman. She'd always suffered from arthritis. And it was difficult for her.
You had jobs to do? Was there any pocket money?
Oh yeah. Didn't get pocket money for her. You were expected to do that, to clean the cutlery, and in those days, of course, you didn't have stainless steel. You had metal knives, and you had to clean them. You've probably done it yourself. Yeah.
Oh yes, we all had to muck in. So where did you get pocket money from? Were you able to earn anything?
Running errands for the neighbours. Probably get a penny or so, if we were lucky. And perhaps doing jobs for neighbours, you know, in the garden or something like that. Very little pocket money though.
So what about the area generally? You talked about the farm.
Yeah. Well, the farm was there because obviously it had not been sold over to the developer. So we were lucky to have that there. But the rest of the estate went through several roads all around, and only stopped when it got to Lloyds Park. Now Lloyds Park was an extremely nice park that we used to get all our enjoyment from, cricket and football and that sort of thing. And it had the big house there that the name escapes me, but it was. Can you take it off for a minute?
Sure.
Got to think about
We're back again. So we were talking about the farm.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, the farm, I imagine that where our house was built and the rest of the estate had been sold by the farmer to, and the remnants of the farm were still there. For instance, he still had a milking herd, and the cows used to go up and down the road outside and coming in for milking, you see. And if we wanted milk ourselves, we would go down to where there was a window in the door, a wooden window, and knock on that and ask for your milk, which she put into your jug for you. And
no pasteurising?
No pasture. Oh no, this is good solid stuff, you know. Never mind the TB or anything like that.
This would be the farmer's wife, presumably?
Yes. I think we've dealt with playing cricket out the back, haven't we?
Oh yes.
But that was still the farmer's field, you see.
But he clearly didn't mind you using his land?
He didn't. Well, it's close up to the fence, you see, and that wasn't one. There used to be animals in the field as well, and we used to go out there and feed them or something like that, but not interfere with them.
So, schooling. What were the subjects you excelled at, if any? How did you?
I wasn't too bad on English. I was quite good in maths and algebra and that sort of thing. And that's why I became an accountant later on. But
so when did you leave school? At what age? Must be very.
It would be. I'd gone then to the secondary school, which was William Morris Secondary School, and I stayed there until, oh wait a minute, we go into evacuation.
That's right, I was going to say, because at the age of 15 it would have been 1939 with the outbreak of war.
That's right, yeah.
But you were still at school when war broke out?
I was still at school, and we can talk about evacuation now if you like.
Yeah, please do, yes.
We were evacuated to...
what, in 1939?
1939, yes. In fact, you may not know, and many people be surprised to know that in 1938, they expected the war to break out, and provision was made for evacuation, just as we did in 1939, but it stalled because, in fact, they didn't declare war. It was only in 1939 they declared war. And nevertheless, we had to go to school ready to catch the trains. And I can remember now that one little boy was coming along complete with his fishing rods, net and everything. And we all had the regulation labels tied to us.
Optimistic.
And when that happened in 1939, of course, we were off. We went to Hoe Street Station at about, we got there about 8:30, I suppose, in the morning. And we had an apple and a sandwich, and that was to last us all day, because it's unbelievable now when you think about it, but we didn't get to where we were going in Bedfordshire until 5:30 in the evening. Starving, absolutely starving. And whilst I mentioned Bedfordshire, in evacuation, we were put in the church, the warmest place there, and people from the village came in, the ones that had volunteered to have children, and they came in, and it's a bit like a cattle market, where in fact they walked along the rows of children. In fact, some of the farmers were well enough to try the muscles of some of the bigger boys.
Looking for the sturdy ones, yes.
And they say, he's all right, and you knew that the guy was going to be hard labour more than anything else.
So were you all together, the children, or who was evacuated? All of you?
The whole school.
I mean,
the whole school were in various villages around.
But your brothers?
They were working by then. None of those evacuated.
So it was only you?
I was the only one to be evacuated. And
was it an adventure to you, or was it a sadness?
It was tremendous. I thought it was great, but This cattle market arrangement upset us all. We were so cold and miserable that
Where did you end up then?
I ended up with a lady who had been cooking at the big house, you know, something like this, and she was the most magnificent cook, so I really landed on my feet because I was a magnificent eater. And it was a happy year that I spent there. And after the war, when I came back, I went to see her, and she was delighted, you know, and we took her out to lunch. And
what was her name? Do you remember the name?
The name of the family was Britain, and I can remember that because in Salford, which was the village, which is just very near to Woburn Sounds, there is a lane called Britain Lane, and it's because of her family that's there. And she was tremendous. She kept her little council, it was only a council house, but she kept it spick and span. Nobody was allowed to go into the front room because that was for when the vicar came.
The parlour.
The parlour, yes. And she was very good, and she kept chickens, so we had eggs. And
so there's just one of you?
I was the only one in her house, yes. There was about 20 odd. It turned out, and I didn't realise it until later, later in the week that we were there, that I was the oldest one there. So you're in charge. Anything they do wrong, down to you. I didn't like that very much. But anyhow, we were about 2 miles away from Cranfield, which is now a university, I believe, but at the time it was a fighter airfield. So of course we went up there and found out all about them. If we heard that one of the planes had crashed, we'd go up there and try and get a bit of it, but it was quite good.
So what about enemy action then? Did you see any bombing in London, for instance, before you were evacuated, or?
No, I wasn't journeying up to London then, but I mean, there were various times, and there was a bomb later on in the war that landed at the top of the road, and we were all at home and underneath the table or wherever we chose to get out of the... We didn't have an indoor shelter, we had an outside Anderson shelter.
This was in Walthamstow?
Yeah.
So this was before you were evacuated?
Yes, it was put in before I was evacuated, but I didn't use it until I came back. But, and the trouble was that it used to flood, and my brother and I had a go at the shelter to make it waterproof, and it was a bit better, but if it was heavy rain, you didn't go there, you just curled up underneath the table and hope for the best. But,
so you were evacuated for a year and then came back home again?
Yes, had to come because that was my last year of my school life, and
so back home at the age of 16?
There was no possibility. The only sort of work available there was in the brickyards. You've heard of the brickyards in that area in Bedford.
London Brick Company?
That's right, LBC. And I didn't fancy that, and there were no jobs in the office going. I wanted an office job, so I came home and got work there.
Doing what?
In the office. It was a company that was making bunks for the shelters, and it was a government contract, you know. And I was in the office there, and one of my interesting jobs, there was a lot of rip-off of timber. Lorry loaded timber would come down, and you'd find that somebody had ripped off 20 or 30 lengths of timber. And it was difficult because all under licence was very difficult to get. And So I was working in the office, and when there was a load of timber that came in, I had to go down and check it out. And I made a sort of chute, if you like, that came off the back of the lorry, and as each piece came off, it registered on the number of feet that it was length. I thought that about out of my own head. Clever chap.
Very clever, yeah.
Very and that lasted for about a year, and then in actual fact, I joined the Air Force from there.
So you joined the Air Force at the age of what, 17?
It was 17 and a half, because the conscription date, everyone had to join the services if they were fit at 18. And my brother came home on leave, and of course he was in the army then. And this is Doug, that he ended up out in the Far East. Say a bit about that in a minute, if you like. But he trying to think now. Yes, we were talking about.
Well, so you joined the RAF?
No, he came home on leave, that's right. And he got his rifle with him. And I said, what the hell have you got that for? So he said, you have to take it wherever you go, as regulations at the
Married
time.
to it, yeah.
You're married to it, that's right. And I felt it, and I thought, I'm not having this. I couldn't possibly carry that around all day. So I decided at that moment that to join the Air Force, because if you put down for flying duties, you joined at 17 and a half, and you didn't go into the army. So that was a good move, I thought, in my place, and I got into the RAF, and that, now I've got a few notes about that thing. Do you want to carry on?
Yes, you tell us.
Okay. Yes. So the first thing with the Air Force was going to St John's Wood, which was the Aircrew Receiving Centre, and we were billeted in 5-storey flats with a shelter in the basement that had been evacuated from central London for all the rather wealthy flats, if you know what I mean. And they were taken over by the Air Force. And this is when the bombing was on in London. And every time there was a siren sounded, we had to go down 5 flights of stairs into the basement. And this went on for, goodness me, there's a butterfly there, can you see it?
It's a mild day.
Sorry. And it got so bad that all of the things that were set down for us to do were cancelled, because we were just walking around like zombies, having had no sleep at all. But at St John's Wood we had kitting out. We had to get all our uniforms and that sort of thing, with lots of jabs and medicals and goodness knows what. Interesting thing, our meals were taken in the buffet of the London Zoo. You know where that is, St John's Wood. And amongst the animals. But most of the animals are being shipped out to Bedfordshire. And all that was left were the monkeys and other smaller animals, you know. And next note I've got says Lloyds Cricket Ground. Oh yes, yes. There was a special parade in Lloyds Cricket Ground, and there were hundreds and hundreds of RAF people there, and there were about 7 or 8 group captains, very high ranking, you know, and you'd never believe that that was all because somebody had noticed the greatcoats that had been issued to the long and the tall, short and the small, were all, as they were marching along, the bottoms of the greatcoats were, it won't come out, oh yes it will come out on film, were at this level or that level. So this parade was so that these group captains who go around with a piece of chalk and a yardstick to sort of say, right, cut that one there, cut that one there. Unbelievable. You wouldn't think it's the sort of thing that we laughed about that for weeks. And we were having aptitude tests as well, deciding what we were suitable for, and I was suitable for a WOP AG, so that started my service career.
So what is a WOP AG?
Thank you. Well, sorry folks, WOP AG is a wireless operator air gunner. Thank you for interruption. And I could go straight on into my first training, right? And I think the next shot for me was to go up to Bridlington in Yorkshire, where we used to parade along the front, and although it never happened when I was there, the Germans used to come in and strafe the promenade there and kill as many of us as they could. But, the next shot was Yatesbury in Wiltshire, which I'm sure a lot of people know about, for our radio training. And I got my first flight in a Percival Proctor there, and it was just a quick flight to get you used to seeing whether you would be able to take to flying. Some people weren't. They would say, you know, she freeze up solid, but there we are.
But you were fine.
The weather's, yeah. The weather was absolutely freezing. We had one of those belly stoves in the Nissen hut, and everyone, about 20 people, crammed around that. And if you've ever seen the penguins trying to keep huddled together to keep warm, it was a bit like that. And some would move out and others would move in. And it was terrible. And we got lots more flying there, of course. One interesting point, we had a notice coming round which said, would we volunteer for a marching past King George V? Anything to relieve the boredom, you know, so we did just that. But to get there we had to do, in our own time, lots more marching and drilling and goodness knows what else. And we finally did march past the Mansion House in London, and King George was there, and he was very ill at the time. You know, he died of cancer, and he really looked terrible, and they tried to make him up, and that made him look even worse. I mean, somebody had just got it looked like brown sugar or something all over his face, and he looked really ghastly.
This would be George VI though, wouldn't it? George V died in 1937. It would be the Queen's father.
The Queen's father?
Yeah, George VI.
I'll have a word with my secretary that she's given me the wrong... Yes, George V, he wasn't there then, it was George VI. Thank you for that. And further in on to training, we were posted to several places in Scotland for doing air gunnery and radar and goodness knows what, including Turnberry, the golf course. And we weren't playing golf there, but we were firing 12-bore guns, you know, once again to get us familiarised with weapons. But it's a ridiculous sort of thing. And up there we had a lot of shooting at drogues dragged behind aircraft. It's just a wire that came out and what do you call these things? Windsock. Windsock behind them. And I had the honour and the swift kick for actually dropping the rogue into the sea because I hit the wire instead of the rogue.
With what sort of gun?
These were, yes, I'm sorry, these were 303s rapid fire, you know, what do you call them?
Bren gun or...
No, turrets. We were in turrets.
Oh, sorry, in an aircraft. This was in an aircraft.
This is in an aircraft, I'm sorry, I didn't make it plain, did I? No, it was in a good old Avro Anson there that fitted a turret to that and took up 5 men at a time. And as I say, I was the last one to go, and all their wonderful shots disappeared with them, and we all got nil for the for all that firing, the air firing. But
you were trained as a radio operator. But you
trained as a radio operator. Yes, that was done at Yatesbury. Yatesbury is number 2 radio school, and it is not there still, but I think the 2 radio school is moved elsewhere. I went back to see after the war whether I could find out where it was, and it's just a farmer's field again. And the only way you could tell was that the hangar, which the farmer had allowed them to leave on these grounds so he could house his big machinery in it, was in the same place. So, well, there's the hangar, and something should be down here. It's all gone, the whole lot. No.
So what came next?
Well, well, the next thing is you appreciate that you are, up to this moment, you are just one person, and we've been told that we were going to be an air sea rescue squadron, and we'd be flying Warwick aircraft. That aircraft is a development of the Wellington, the good old Wimpy, you know, and it has a crew of 6, and we need 2 gunners, front and rear, and 2 WAP-AGs, a navigator and a pilot. And the RAF way of forming a crew up is to put you in a big room with plenty to drink and give you plenty to eat as well, and then you all talk to each other, and you know, after you've formed an opinion of things, you melt into a crew. That happens with the usually with the pilot, who is sometimes an officer but not necessarily so, will be walking around and will get his navigator first. So the 2 of them have joined up then, and then they come around, and there are hundreds of us in this room, and they go around and they stop and they say, you fixed up yet? And they say, no, not yet. So he said, well, this is Andy, and this is, I'm Jock, and would you like to join us? And then, having done that, and they've got their 2 WAP-AGs, then they go along and find out, any gunners here? And go around, and literally within half an hour, we got a complete crew that we stayed with all through the war. And it is amazing that just the whole thing was well lubricated with suitable drinks.
Oh, you know. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, do you want me to carry on with?
So the aircraft, you had your aircraft then. You had your Warwick by then.
We weren't in fact flying aircraft then. But how's the time going there?
Yeah, it's fine.
And
but they were forming a crew for the Warwick.
That's right. Yes.
Wasn't that a bomber?
Yes, it was. One of its duties was bombing, but we weren't bombing. We were.
So you didn't need a bomb aimer.
We didn't need bomb aimer. No, not at all. But we would have soon got one, you know, if it was necessary. But,
so how did air sea rescue work with an aircraft?
Well, we carried I think it was a 28-foot lifeboat underneath the aircraft, and drop it on 6 parachutes. It's stuffed to the brim with survival gear. It's got 8 sets of clothing, an inner and an outer waterproof, of course, and the inner is kapok for warmth. and lots of rations, of course, cigarettes, chewing gum, and I don't think that at that time they had these meals that could be heated up just by breaking the lid off. Have you seen those for camping? Well, we didn't have that, but I mean, you could open them up and make a decent meal and keep yourself going on those. We had radio, floating radio, and sails, and you had a what do you call it, a rudder that you used to have to ship, and also identification flags and a special dye that would colour the water where you dropped in. Very important, because from I spent hours looking for somebody, and it's just sea that is sea coloured, and it almost looks black. But with this special dye, you can see it a long, long way away, and you can, you know, home in on it. But there we are now. We had to. The final training exercise that we did was a journey into the Atlantic to find a piece of rock that sticks out of the Atlantic, and it is a piece of rock. It's a spur of rock called Rock Ore. You may have heard of it. Have you heard of it? Oh, you have. Good. And that was the final one, and you had to pass that to, you know, pass the whole crew through as operative. But unfortunately, on that exercise, one of our engines started heating up, lost its oil, and we had to feather it. And so we knew that we can't stay airborne very long with only one engine. So we had to send out an SOS. I was on the radar at the time, couldn't find very much, and as we were sinking a bit lower, we got an answer to the SOS from another RAF station that was on the island of Tyree, and it's so small that you can hardly see it on an ordinary. I've looked for it and have found it in one of my maps, motoring maps, you know, and we managed to get in there, and the skipper made a good landing, and then got told off because the rules say that if you've lost an engine, you're coming in on one engine, you have to come in on a very low, slow approach. But unfortunately, as we approached, it so happens that the RAF on that tiny blob of land were another air sea rescue squadron, and they just coming out to look for us, and was blocking the runway, of course. My chap came in and leapfrogged him, and shouldn't have done it, but what else? And then he got ripped off for it.
Well, he couldn't have gone round again.
No, couldn't have gone round again. And he told the CO of this air sea rescue squadron. They had a good argument over it.
I bet. Yeah. What matters was that you got back.
We got in safely. We got in safely, and we never did find the piece of rock, but they passed us through as a consequence of it. Can we have a rest for a moment? I want some.
Sure.
I want to take a glass. No, I'm already am I overseas? No, I'm not. That's right. Well, all right, if you want to. We've formed crews.
Yes.
And her father was.
Whose father?
The girl that I was going with at the time. We had got engaged before I'd gone into the Air Force, and her father had been in the RFC.
Royal Flying Corps.
Royal Flying Corps, that's right. I like it when you say that because some of them don't know what the RFC is. And he was the recorder down at Southend. Quite a recorder is quite a high official.
Job.
And I don't think he cared for me very much, but so what?
Not good enough for his girl.
Well, no, I think he was, if I tell you that in the afternoon of the visit that we paid down there, we all went to the pictures. He said, I thought I'd take you to, there's a nice picture, a nice film on, and the film was called The Sea Shall Not Have Them, and it was about a ditched aircraft, and there these chaps were in a rubber dinghy in the North Sea or somewhere, popping off like flies, and very nearly all of them. And he was giving us the impression, you know, don't want you marrying my daughter if this is what you're aiming for, because you already knew I'd be flying. But very subtle, of course, he was. But the point I'm making is this: I thought I didn't think much of him, but before I left, he said, "I'd like you to have this," and it was a cap badge. Exactly the same as mine, but it was RFC, and I was in that with all through my service there, until somebody over in France somewhere pinched the hat and had the badge as well.
That was a shame.
It's one of those things, but anyway, it's not worthwhile mentioning it. You've only got 11 minutes left. Now, let me have a look at what I've got here.
So you landed back safely from that mishap. Was that the only mishap you had?
The only of that sort. Oh, we had we got to the position. I have to say, just off camera, that the Warwick was a jolly good aircraft, but as I told you, it's a pumped up version of a Wimpy, and its wings have been extended, and heavier engines Pratt & Whitney's put in.
Why was that?
Because we had to do longer journeys overseas, and you know, we had to have the extra duration of flights.
Tanks and whatever. So what was the operational limit range?
Don't ask me things like that. We could stay up for about 6 or 7 hours. Not as good as Lancaster bomber, I don't think. But, I can't convert that into.
So it's a 3-hour journey. At what, 400 miles an hour?
Something like that, yeah.
So you can do 1,000 miles out.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Before
we were operating most of the time over Mediterranean, so it was long distance all the time.
Oh right.
But
so you were.
The point I wanted to make is this: so the reason why we had to watch our engines, because they're heavier engines in a vibrating wing, and we used to get the oil pipes shattering, just leaking a bit, you know. In fact, one of the duties, we used to have always somebody in the mid-upper turret, not to use the guns, but to keep their eyes on the oil slicks in each engine and report. But we had 1 or 2 near misses there where the oil pumping out, and how long do you think it'll last, you know? Oh, well, we've got another 20 to go, so we'll make it, you know. But that's not worth talking about.
Just goes to show the type of flying you were doing.
Well, that's right. I mean, not like some of these fighter pilots, you know, to flip up and up, down, up 10 minutes and then back.
So you were shipped out to where then? Are you saying the Mediterranean? Where were you based?
Well, I've got a head in here, overseas service, and I don't know whether I can tell you all what happened here, but if I can just very briefly say, we were in a converted liner, a big liner, and not as big as these massive things today, but a big liner, and they got bunk beds where, in fact, in the hall, what do you call it? The big where they hold the dances on board there.
In the ballroom.
In the ballroom, that's right. And there were bunk beds right up to the ceiling, about 12 bunks right the way up. No, not 12.
Didn't want to fall out of there then?
No. Oh, you've broken your neck if you come out of it. But that's to give you an idea of that. When I say that I'm on a converted liner, it's not very nice. And since we were gunners, we were given the job of manning the 14-pounders that got on board, which were anti-aircraft guns. And
so you were a gunner as well?
That's WAP AG, air gunner.
Oh, sorry, yes.
AG, air gunner. And on the way out, all us gunners were put on these 14-pounders, just in case. But there was very little chance of this happening. But the point was that they gave us, what do you call these? The
a suit.
Yes, what do you call them? This is where my memory's going.
What, against water or against noise?
Against the warmth, the cold. Duffel coats.
Yeah.
Duffel coats, that's the word. Duffel coats, and it was bloody cold too. You're right out on the either side, port and starboard, and just.
So this was in the winter time.
Winter time, yes, and sort of looking out for God knows what. But the weather was so bad that nothing was there, so we just used to turn our back on the whole thing. And
so this is when you were being posted.
This is when we were going out to Italy. But the point I'm making is this: it was a good thing because all the rest of them on board, it was so rough, they weren't eating any meals at all. Their stomachs were so upset, and we used to do a 4-hour stint up there, fit as fleas, you know, hungry as anything, go down and eat this food.
So it didn't bother you, the ship. So you went out to Italy?
That's right.
So what year would this have been then? After the Italians?
Well, I can... the point I've made here, that we landed in Italy when we were fighting up at Monte Cassino, if you know anything about Monte Cassino. So it must have been 1940...
44, I suppose.
3, 4, 44, 3. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. If I can give you an idea of how long this is going to take, then you can tell me to cut it down if you like.
It's your story. You have all the time you want.
Yeah, but then you've got to put another thing on it, haven't you? Isn't it? Well, let's go for it then. Okay. And we're on this converted liner, and I told you the funny things about that. We landed in Naples, and whilst there at a place called Portici. It's at the foot of Vesuvius, so of course one of the things we had to do was to climb Vesuvius, which is an experience, but it's quite good. And the guide sort of goes up there and he gets a bit of newspaper and he says, "Mind your foot," and he puts it down there and whoosh, goes up. But, you know, from there we went to, from Naples we went to Malta, which was our base. The squadron was operating from How Far, which, have you been to Malta?
No.
How Far, which I understand now from people that have spent holidays in there, How Far is now an industrial estate. It used to be our airfield. And first impression I had of Malta was all the churches were bombed and were being, that started reparations in. But, how far? Now here's, our mess was right on the seafront, at a place called Calafrana, and you could literally swim all day if you were off duty, and then just put a towel around you and go in and get your meals, which I understand some of the hotels do these days. But now this one I think, I said we flew to a place called Bleeder. Now I went one day. Do you know anything about the wartime postal arrangements?
No.
Well, the Army Post Office.
BFPO, isn't it?
BFPO, that's right. So you do know something. Is it on? Oh, blimey! Didn't realise. They used to have addresses which told you very little. They told you what your unit was, and they told you what the man's name was, but they wouldn't tell you where it was, except the general area of operations, which in our case was Central Mediterranean Forces.
Could be anywhere.
Could be anywhere. So I knew my brother was in the Air Force, and I knew he was over in my direction. And I was in the flight office on one occasion, and I happened to be turning over some of the things there, and I saw the word Bleeder, and I said, why are we... Oh no, I saw his unit number, 56 whatever it was, and I said, why do we fly there? Oh, he said, we have the major renovations done there. And I said, oh, that's interesting, my brother's there. So to cut a long story short, I asked the CEO, he came past, and this was on my 18th birthday. No, not my 18th, on my 21st birthday. Sorry, my 21st birthday. And I said...
1945.
That's it. And I said, I just found out my brother is at Bleeder. Oh, I said, so it's my 21st birthday, any chance of getting a lift to see him? And he said, got any duties? I said, no, he's a lovely Australian bloke. And he said, no, okay, 5 o'clock in the morning, he said, you know, you come, you'll be bringing
This is the start of the second tape of our talk with Alan Farrant. There we are. So you're in Malta. You've met up with your brother Len.
That's right, and that only lasted 24 hours, of course, because we had to take the other aircraft back. And
when you say take them back, you had
back to Malta.
You were part of the crew, so the whole crew went with
the whole. Oh yes, part of the crew. So it just wasn't me taking it back.
So how many of these underslung boats did you put in the water? Any? Did it happen?
It certainly happened when we got to Malta. Thank you for telling me that, because there was a demonstration when we arrived, flying but airborne lifeboat. They never heard of them, obviously, as had most people, but so they put a demonstration on for the local mayor and Prime Minister of Malta, I think the other chap was, who hated the Brits, and yeah, he couldn't stand them. He liked all the good things they were doing to keep his island from becoming overrun by the Germans, but he didn't like the presence of the Brits. He wanted us out. So we put a demonstration on for him, and I don't know whether you know much about parachutes, but they always have to have a way of opening them. In a normal parachute drop, passage of the air will pull the parachute out once you've pulled the pin to open the pack up. In our case, you had to have a deadline fixed to the aircraft which did the same thing. and some stupid person had not attached the deadline, and the whole lot of it went straight into the water at high speed, and you had a load of matchsticks floating.
Smashed to pieces. Yeah.
Absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
And, anyhow, we have various detachments from Malta to Maison Blanche in North Africa and to Elmas in Sardinia. A detachment is usually about 6 weeks. 6 weeks, and it's a wing of 3 aircraft. The aircraft of all ready to go should the charge, the necessity be there. But unfortunately, in the detachment at Maison Blanche, when we were there, they were attacked by local dissident groups who wanted home rule for North Africa and that, and they shot up our crew, not our crew, the crew that was there, and stole the guns, because we each had a revolver, 38 Smith & Wesson, and no, you couldn't possibly have rifles on board an aircraft like that, and pinch all the rifles, destroy the aircraft, cut all the wires, so that was finished. So we'd lost a crew, and I think it's shortly after that we packed up sending detachments there. But I mean, they had the French, what do you call the French army there?
French Foreign Legion.
Foreign Legion, that's right.
But this was 1945, so towards the end of the war, I suppose.
Yes, oh yes, they were there. We went up to their barracks. It's one of the centres, main centres of the French Foreign Legion there. And at Elmas, which is in the south of the island of Sardinia, we used to have a high-speed train that ran from north to south to the main town up there, which I forget, but it used to be the run that we used to do if we got time off, to take kit bags of cigarettes up there for black market. Used to buy our... You
were a smoker, I suppose, weren't you?
Oh, I was a smoker, yeah. I got the watch to prove it. all the jewellers there and the watchmakers could have looked for our going there, so that we could give them the cigarettes in charge, in payment for the watches and whatever they wanted to sell us. That was a good run, and funnily enough, that was put in by Mussolini. It was a pride. In fact, the whole Elmas airport, which is still going today, was one of his pride and joys. And the lines were laid dead straight. They went through farmers' fields and everything, and there's no safety things like gates or level crossings or anything to stop it. Once it started, it went straight there. And I remember on the journey that I did, we killed a few sheep who drifted on there, and you just hear another sheep gone. And round about this point, we left Malta. As I say, the Prime Minister there didn't care for the Air Force very much, and we had to recite ourselves near Algiers, Maison Blanche. Now, the squadron, the whole squadron with all its all the works they wanted, the spare engines and the ground crew equipment and that sort of thing. We all piled, and all the crews piled onto an Italian battleship. And I remember the name, believe it or not, after all these names, I've written it down. It's called the Vittorio Emanuele, Duca d'Aosta. Now I've heard of Aosta before. I have. It's a place in Italy, quite well known, and we travelled on this thing. It's a 3-day journey from Italy there from Malta rather to Maison Blanche, and the aircraft flew over. Those that were, I think they got them all ready to go, and the CO came over, and I must tell you this, he had got himself a dog and a cat, and they said, you know, put them to sleep, and he said, not bloody likely. And so he said, dog in the rear turret, cat in the front turret. And that was fine until the engine started up and they went mad.
Terrified.
And absolutely terrified, and I don't know whether one of them broke out or not, but anyhow, when they got to Maison Blanche, they wouldn't come out. So they just left food outside for them, and kept the doors and the turrets open, and waited for them to come out.
Eventually they did.
But poor thing, what a thing to do to animals like that.
Terrified.
So we're now based at Maison Blanche, doing the same job before anything was going. And
tell me about any successful deployment of these. The success of these boats. Was it a successful facility?
It was successful in certain respects, except that you have to bear in mind that they were dropped sometimes to crews of aircraft who were in many cases injured, in many cases they were stone cold, and the fact that they although the boat contains all instructions for rigging the sails and setting course for home and that sort of thing, got compasses and everything else on board, but sometimes they were too far gone. They'd they would drop the boat to the men, and even in the right vicinity, and we used to drop it so that the men would drift down onto the boat, and the boat was held still in the sea by sea drogue, and they would be too weak to even take advantage of it.
So you can climb on board. Yeah.
They couldn't climb on board. On other cases, they would be so close to territory that was still got the troops on there from the Axis, and you'd have to send in fighter aircraft there to keep them away from it. Altogether, it was somewhat doubtful. The success rate was quite low, about 15% or something like that.
But you did your part, right? And the boat landed in the water as
planned. The boat would land in the water, yes, yeah. And well, that's the only thing you can do, and then hope that they'd be able to do their part and rig the boat, and quite a lot of them were saved. As I say, about 15%, which is not bad, I suppose, but not good enough really. But,
better than nothing.
That's right.
So did the enemy have such a facility?
The enemy had, I'm talking about the Channel now, they had boats moored in the Channel, not airborne lifeboats. They didn't have airborne lifeboats. What they used to do, because there was a lot of traffic across the Channel, and aircraft that had just bombed London or whatever coming down in the sea there, and they had these things anchored there, We didn't interfere with them or anything like that. That was sort of forbidden. And they used to take, they'd got survival gear on board, as we did with the boats, of course. And a similar sort of thing, but not in the same way. It was a good thing, because if any of our chaps came down in the channel, they knew about these things,
So
knew
they could
exactly
use them
where
as
they
well.
were, so they could use them as well. And I think several people were saved that way, except that, of course, once they knew that we'd used them, it was a race for who could get to them first, after the Germans. Yes, coming back to the Italian battleship, we did rather well out of that, because we had our cook with us, and the Italians absolutely loved bully beef. You know, they hadn't had it at all, they hadn't had much meat at all, and we did a deal with them for pasta, and our cook made up some lovely meals. Other than that, I don't recommend travelling on a battleship when you're the only way to sleep is on deck, on the steel planks that are there.
So what interaction did you have with the enemy? Were you ever under serious threat?
No, never saw it. The only Germans I saw were prisoners, and Italian who were they used to be in our camps looking after us as cooks, and they were quite decent blokes. You know, they were like us, far away from home and hoping to get back. No, we saw no action at all, and that's good. Now, next thing I got here is they had there was a period when, in fact, the war had finished, and they've got these thousands and thousands of troops, one sort or another, that wanted to get home, back to their loved ones. But they couldn't go home because there were no jobs, and you had to rebuild the economy, rebuild the factories, get the factories working again, and then there'd be jobs for them to go to. So meanwhile, we had to stay out there. And this happened to me as well. And after a while, they set up home leave, which meant that providing you could get home, you could have 3 weeks leave, and that was good. But the journey home was a bit hairy, because we had been steadily bombing all the bridges. So we brought in the Royal Engineers to rebuild the bridges that are down
across
there,
Europe,
so that we could get the trains running again. Yeah, they went all across Europe. I suppose somebody else helped as well.
so you wouldn't get a flight home, you had to go back.
Oh, no flights. Oh, no, you had to do that route. And they, I wish I could remember, they called it the Medlock. Now that means Mediterranean something or other. I can't remember what the LOC meant. I think it meant leave on account of service or something like that. But anyhow, we left by Medlock for UK, and we had to eat, obviously, so one of the carriages had been turned into a canteen, and there was the biggest cauldron I've ever seen, a huge great cauldron full of soup. And as you turned, we rattled with the soup was splashing everywhere, and somebody had got loads and loads of bread, beautiful bread, home cooked, you know, and that's all we ate, which is great, except we didn't eat it all, because as we came through Germany, we were there about 3 in the morning. I could hear a noise, and I got out of the back bunk, went to the window. We'd come into a railway terminus or somewhere, and there's all these German children in rags begging for bread because they haven't had the food for such a long time. It was hard, and
what were you doing in Germany then? Because Germany wouldn't be a route to home, would it?
well, it was part of Germany. There are two routes. One was Medlock A and one was Medlock B.
Yeah.
And Medlock B, I think, went that way up at the top of Italy, you know, and it through Germany that way, and Austria and France. And Medlock A came down here to the south of France, and that's the way we came back. And we came back that way just to get another view of things, and we got lost there. Deliberately, because when we got to Marseille and the airfield there, we found that some of the old squadron blokes were doing a job there on transit work. They were clerks. They'd been turned into clerks just to get all these people in transit and get them off to wherever they were going. And when we got there, we said, well, how do you do this? And they said, well, when you come in, we put your name at the top there, and at the end of the day, if you haven't reached the bottom, you go on to the next sheet. So I said, well, when you do that, I said, can you put us down there? We'd like to stay as long as we can. We stayed for 6 weeks. Until the money round. Oh, we've got a ration of money, but it wasn't much. But so we were swimming out there, and the south of France can't be bad, can it?
No, that's right. The war was over, so...
The war was over, and really we were in embarrassment. But I already had a posting because I had to go back to Elmas in Sardinia and take charge of the orderly room there, just for something to do, you know. And I didn't find out until I got back that there was a married bloke there, longing to see his wife and kids, and I had to take over from him. And I didn't tell him what we had done. I think he would have slaughtered me.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been happy.
But there we are. And then I'll do this as quickly as I can. So we had 3 weeks there. I told you all this. Lots of swimming and sunbathing until the cash ran out. And I had to get a flight to Sicily to pick up my kit. We'd left all our kit in store. Mine was in Sicily. And strangely enough, it was all right. He just handed my ticket over and it came out. And oh yes, we've now reached my group. I told you that release groups were the way they released you. Your group was, you were given a number, so you knew that you were in line, nobody was leapfrogging you. And my number was 56, and my number came, these numbers used to be posted on the orders for you to get going. And when the release group number came up, you returned to England. I got 8 weeks leave, spent all my demob money, so I had to get some work or starve. So I decided to train for an accountancy degree in the city. Spent 3 years working in London, studying in the evenings, but at last I qualified as an AACCA. That's not the FCA, because I hadn't been articled at all. You had to be articled for that, so I went for the certified accountant. Now, this is an interesting bit. I met dear Joyce at college, and I reckon it was a set-up job because my brothers had been working with their friends to get somebody to get me married off, because I was going with at the time with another girl that they didn't think much of. It's good, isn't it, when your brothers...
That's right, sorting out your love life for you.
Yeah, yeah. And Joyce was studying at the same college for dressmaking, and I thought she was very nice. And I explained to her that we could not marry until I was qualified. And I said, yeah, silly girl, she accepted that. And after qualification, we bought a house in Woodford Green, which needed a licence to build. The house wasn't there, it was just a building site, because that's the way you had to have a licence to build a house. And licences were gold dust.
So what year
we
was this?
stayed there for 15 years. What year was that? 53, I think.
So you were married in 1953?
Married in 53, yes, and moved straight into the house.
Married where?
In Woodford Bridge. There's a lovely old church, and the vicar, who was equally old, but his surplice, I always remember when we knelt down in front of him, he got half his breakfast on his surplice. It's rotten to take the mickey out of these people, but there we are.
So you were both Church of England?
Yes, and although we weren't at that time regular churchgoers, but
were your parents churchgoers?
no, they weren't. But I've been going to what do you call it?
What, Sunday school?
Sunday school. Sunday school, yes, regularly. And during the war, those sort of things dropped off quite a lot because it was a blackout and all that.
So disruptive. Yeah. So you were married in church?
Married in church, and we spent our holiday up in Derbyshire, and it poured and poured with rain. Luckily.
That's what honeymoon's about. Don't need good weather, do you?
That is very hard.
So settled down.
And then after 15 years in this Woodford Green house, before moving to Valley Cottage in Fordham. And
So that would
I've
have
got to
been
note there, that was the best move we ever made.
in 1968.
That would have been around about the time. But you're keeping track of these things, aren't you? Yes. Well, he's 68, yeah, I suppose it was.
So you've been here 41 years.
Now, I had something to say about Joyce. Although we moved out to a Fordham, and that meant I had to go to work to my office in London, a bit further, and a more difficult journey, because I used to go up by underground from Woodford, but it was well worth it. Joyce was happy, this was the point. Joyce was happy working, making a wonderful garden, and she was working for the local council at the time, and I was helping when I was at home. Eventually, Joyce's garden was good enough to win the Fordham Horticultural Society Best Kept Garden competition in 1987.
Well, I never.
And I still have a shield in my possession.
Good stuff.
That's the end. I've tried to tidy the thing up to a combination.
So that's how you came to Fordham, and that's our link.
And is it still on the site? Oh no, you went into a newer thing, didn't you?
Oh yes, you got another film.
That's all right.
So, 1987, best garden.
I wonder what's going to happen to the Horticultural Society.
Does it still exist?
Well, if it exists at all, it just needs cranking up and getting people to do it.
Well, we had open gardens a couple of years ago, and Yes, you're right. It ought to be. So, when did you retire?
When I was 61, I didn't want to plug on until 65,
So that was 1985. So, yeah, you were
born in 24.
Yeah, so you were retired.
85.
Retired then.
So I retired then. That was the best move I ever made
Mm.
too.
Mm.
And of course the pension scheme, quite a good pension scheme actually. I get an increase every year, and it is what they call a final salary scheme. You may have read it in the papers and not understood what it meant, but it really means that whatever you are earning at the date you retire, that is what the pension is based on.
It's very good. Very good indeed.
Are we still recording?
Yes, we are. So what did you do after retirement? What did you mainly do? It's just around the home and...
Well, helping Joyce with the garden and
when did you start?
Anything
with local...
in the house that needed doing.
And church, when did you start going up?
It's only recently that I've been going to church, just the last few years. And I joined the
Friendship Club as well.
Friendship Club, helping Barbara with that. And enjoyed life, shall we say.
Absolutely. Well, there we are. That's the story of your life. So that's been very good. Thanks very much.